The year was 1969. Detroit was drunk on gasoline, horsepower, and ego. And right in the middle of that beautiful mechanical war rolled a machine so outrageous, so unapologetically violent-looking, it practically punched a hole through the wind itself. The Dodge Charger Daytona wasn't built to look pretty. Nah. This thing was born because Dodge was sick of losing on NASCAR tracks. Ford had the Torino Talladega. Plymouth had the Superbird coming. Everybody was fighting for dominance at over 200 miles per hour, back when drivers sat in steel coffins with cigarette smoke in their lungs and courage where fear should have been. So Dodge engineers did something completely insane. They took the already aggressive Charger, then bolted a gigantic nose cone onto the front like a damn fighter jet. They slapped a towering rear wing on the trunk so high you could still open it without hitting the spoiler. People laughed at it, called it cartoonish, said it looked like science fiction. Then it hit the track. And suddenly, nobody was laughing anymore, because the Daytona became the first NASCAR vehicle in history to break 200 miles per hour, 200, in 1969. With bias-ply tires, questionable aerodynamics, and drivers crazy enough to keep their foot buried into the firewall while the car floated across banking like a missile searching for prey. Under the hood lived pure American violence, the legendary 426 Hemi, 7 liters of fury. Officially rated at 425 horsepower, though everybody knew Detroit lied about numbers back then. Insurance companies were watching too closely. In reality, these monsters made way more. Fire it up, and the whole car shook like it was trying to escape its own body. The exhaust note wasn't just loud, it sounded angry, deep, mechanical, like thunder trapped inside sheet metal. But the Daytona wasn't just brute force. That's what made it terrifying. It was smart. That massive wing, it created real downforce at high speed. The pointed nose sliced through air cleaner than almost anything else on the road. Dodge engineers spent hours testing airflow, trying to tame the Charger's tendency to become light and unstable at extreme speeds. The Daytona changed everything. Suddenly, NASCAR realized cars were becoming too fast, too dangerous. These winged warriors were entering aircraft territory. So eventually NASCAR stepped in and basically strangled them with regulations. That's how you know a car scared people. They had to change the rules just to stop it. And because homologation rules required street versions, Dodge built around 500 Daytona models for the public, which means technically, ordinary people could walk into a dealership and buy one of the most extreme, aerodynamic muscle cars ever created. Imagine that. You're some guy in 1969. You walk into a Dodge dealership looking for a commuter car, and sitting there is this alien-shaped orange missile with a wing taller than your kid. No touchscreen, no traction control, no airbags, just raw horsepower and a warranty probably written with crossed fingers. Today, surviving Daytonas are worth fortunes. Some sell for well over $1 million, depending on rarity and condition, especially the Hemi cars. Collectors treat them like sacred relics now. But the funny thing is, the Daytona was never trying to become a legend. It had one mission: win. That's it. No marketing department trying to create nostalgia. No focus groups. No fake engine sounds pumped through speakers. Just engineers and racers locked in an arms race fueled by speed, pride, and enough gasoline to poison a small country. And maybe that's why people still obsess over the Daytona today, because modern performance cars are surgical, precise, controlled. The Daytona was reckless. It was an era when manufacturers looked at physics and said, yeah, watch this. And somehow, against all odds, it worked. The 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona remains one of the boldest machines America ever unleashed onto asphalt. Not just a muscle car, not just a race car, a warning shot from the golden age of horsepower. And every time that Hemi roars to life, it still sounds like Detroit refusing to die.